Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Let me be the first to wish you a happy Victory Tuesday. Welcome into another Dolphins podcast. It's the day we were all waiting for. Joshua Houtz, we have made it the first victory week of the football season, man. I got to ask you one simple question. Mondays feel a little different, don't they?
Absolutely, man. Check your pulse if you're not fired up, right? This is a Tua's Day episode because we're definitely going to talk about Tua. But, dude, it's just so awesome to have football back and to see the way they played, with all the adversity. It was just an awesome game. So this is the greatest Monday, that we've experienced in a long time. I'm doing okay today, Jake. How have you been?
Dude, I am doing great. I'm not Tua great. I'd say I'm Justin Herbert great. I might average 7 yards of completion. I might complete 23 of 33 passes. But at the end of this, I'm still going to cry a little bit. That's kind of the Justin Herbert way. I might even cut my hair. Joshua, can you believe it took one game for, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, one game it took, Tua going 28 for 45, 466 yards, 3 tutties was enough to make him tied for the favorite to win MVP. Dude, that's bananas.
Yeah, what timeline are we on, right? This has to be a dream. We have to wake up. I mean, this does feel like everything we've always wanted, and it's crazy to see those odds shift and just the entire persona around Tua Tagovailoa, right? You got people apologizing in articles, people admitting that they made mistakes, and yeah, it just feels so different. And it just feels like you have some satisfaction because we kind of felt like Tua was the guy. It just felt like he needed to stay healthy, and that's really all it is, right? I mean, he went out there and delivered in this game, man. 466 yards, like you said. He did have that interception. I'm going to say you're a Tua stan because you didn't even mention that, or that lost fumble. But yeah, dude, this was probably his best game, arguably, that we've seen, and 3 yards shy of his best passing performance, which was against the Baltimore Ravens. So hell of a performance, man. That offense was just psycho killer.
It was just so impressive to watch because we can only go off what we know, right? The whole reason why the lefty quarterback doesn't work is because it hasn't happened before. The whole reason the short quarterback doesn't work is because it's Drew Brees and a bunch of nothing. We're seeing it, man. We are seeing everything unfold in such a unique way for this Miami Dolphins team to be successful in this system. There is one place, though, Joshua, I really want to start this conversation because there was a moment in this game. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let you get. What was the moment where you thought to yourself, it's happening. This is going out of control. It's spiraling. We are doomed. Because there's one play I started losing my mind. Can you guess what it was?
I mean, the one that stuck out to me was the interception. Were you gonna right? I mean, that's when I kind of felt like, oh no, things are going south. What were you talking about? Because I'm just drawing a blank. This could be the Dory memory.
The Miami Dolphins made an absolute statement. Statement tutty. Tyreek Hill, 4 yards out from Tua. Perfect over-the-shoulder catch. The Dolphins have the opportunity, Josh. They have a chance to make it a one-possession game. They have a chance to have an opportunity, even if the Chargers move the ball, with this awesome, awesome offense. The Dolphins will be okay because we'll be up 3 points. Nah.
I'm still not sure what you're referring to.
Jason Sanders missing that extra point.
Okay.
Man, we had a chance to go 3 points.
You had to spell that one out for me. Yeah. I mean, I guess that definitely you kind of felt sick to your stomach, right? Like this is the same old Dolphins, but I have to admit it was that interception and some of those plays early in the game. But yeah, man, Sanders missing that, you just felt like, okay, Herbie's going to go out there, have this fourth quarter comeback, and they're going to end up kicking a field goal and winning this game. But to our point, or to the point of that 3-point spin, Jake, I mean, if they didn't get that pass interference before the half, I mean, that field goal never happens and the Dolphins don't win this game. So it's just crazy how football works. But yeah, when Jason Sanders missed that extra point, I was just like, oh no, here we go again.
Because for us as Dolphin fans, we don't have a lot of experience with the, kneel down, let's run out the clock type of stuff. The only eventful victory, walk off, the first two that come to my mind is Channing Crowder intercepting Tom Brady and Michael Thomas intercepting Tom Brady. Those are the two that come out to me. So the Dolphins are in this very tough spot. Suddenly they're up 2 points, $1:45 left in the game. Justin Herbert completes his first pass, Gerald Everett, 10 yards. Josh, the Dolphins refused to blitz Justin Herbert. This final drive, they blitz him twice. They sack him twice. I couldn't believe I found myself saying, there's no way the Chargers are going to get a 2nd and 21. And then I got to follow that up with there's no way the Chargers are going to get a 3rd and 29. So just go through that final defensive drive. Obviously, it wasn't the biggest game for this defense, giving up 34 points. The Chargers were gashing them on the ground all day. But I mean, money plays are money plays, and Vic Fangio had the Scrooge McDuck looking on his eyes.
Yeah, I was definitely a pessimist there, and I just felt like they were going to find a way to go downfield. I mean, all day you mentioned Austin Eckler. What I think combined, they had 240 yards rushing on the
Bananas.
ground. I mean, they did everything they could, up front, and just gashed the Miami Dolphins. And I want to talk about David Long Jr. later, not to spin out of control, man. But I absolutely thought they were going to drive downfield, and even when it was 3rd and 29, I mean, I think that's how broken I am as a Dolphins fan, man. Like there are just so many steps throughout this game where I'm just like, there's no way the Dolphins are going to overcome this. And, egg on my face. And I'm so glad they found a way.
I try not to get too riled up during games. I'm not a big yeller. I don't throw things. I talk a little loud. I get that. But I was screaming. I had a buddy over. I was screaming. There's no way they can complete a 3rd and 30, right? There's absolutely no way. It's mathematically impossible. And then just the way they dialed up that blitz to get that final sack. I believe Vic Fangio's defense blitzed the Chargers 10 times in total. 7 of those were completions by Justin Herbert. The last 3 were sacks. So it's so important to keep those things in mind. We'll talk more defense as we get going throughout this pod. But Joshua, we have to start with the offensive side of the football. We mentioned Tua's stats, 28 for 45, 466, an average of 10 yards per attempt, 3 tutties, a quarterback rating of 110. Man, it's so hard to kind of embrace this game. It was a 4:00 game. Right before that, I was watching the Saints and the Titans. The biggest difference, as someone who watched Tannehill for years, not once did Tua look scared. Not once did he ever have that deer in the headlights look. And I think, man, that's not something you can quantify or it's not on the stat sheet. But can you think of a time Tua has ever felt scared? Maybe the Titans game, maybe sometime in Buffalo under the floors. But I mean, it just seems like every play, 3rd and 15, he completes it. 3rd and 10 late in the game, he completes it. This dude is as cold as ice.
Yeah, exactly. As ice in his veins. I tweeted it out earlier today. I think there was that J.C. Jackson interception, and then the very next drive, very first play, he hit Tyreek Hill for a 35-yard touchdown. Shout out to Cater Co, who had that German suplex sack at the goal line that forced that punt. And then I think he bobbled a snap, and then at 3rd and 15 dime he threw to Braxton Berrios, right? I mean, on the run, eluding pressure. I mean, we saw today why Tua Tagovailoa was, why so many fan bases want to tank for Tua. He has the anticipation, man. He just makes plays, like you said, when his back's against the wall, and that's what separates him from some of these other guys. I mean, you see the Dolphins Twitter account tweeting that he's him. You see all these people admitting that this guy is as good as advertised, and it's just so nice to be a Dolphins fan and sit here after the long wait, right? We all wanted to have our next Dan Marino, and this looked like one of those Dan Marino games, right? Back then, the defense, struggled at times, but they had this high octane offense. They could just go out there and outscore everyone, and that's what we're seeing. And shout out to Tyreek Hill. I know we're going to talk about him, but again, back to Braxton Berrios real quick. I was a guy who thought maybe Robbie Chosen would be that third receiver. Braxton Berrios stepped up big, right? 3 of 5, caught 3 of 5 passes, and then the 2 of them were, I think, were on 3rd down. So clutch as hell, man. But shout out to Tua because he was just playing incredible.
When we had months to talk about this game, Josh. Did it go as you thought it would? Because there were 2 things we said the Dolphins should do. They should run the football and they should attack outside the numbers. And they did that. The Tyreek touchdowns, man, they were doing that. Down the field, outside of the numbers. That is how you beat that Chargers defense. However, Tua throwing the ball 45 times compared to the Dolphins running the football 20 times. Tua got credit for 5 carries in that too. Is that how big of a surprise is that to you, considering the entire offseason idea of we're going to run the football more? We have to run the football against the Chargers and these types of defenses because it's all, our offense is figured out. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I wonder if he was just trying to trick us all, right? Trying to get us all to think that they were going to come out here and run the ball more. I mean, they were effective when they ran the ball, but there were times when you're sitting there just thinking, "Come on, man! Like we know you got Tyreek Hill, we know you got Jalen Waddle, but let's tone this down a little bit. You're having success running the football, so we still got to see that to believe that. But we got to talk about the offensive line, right, Jake? I mean, that was something that I admittedly kind of laughed at Merrick when he mentioned Kendall Lamb and Isaiah Wynn out there starting. I was like, "Oh, you feel okay?" With Teron Armstead out, Kendall Lamb out there. I mean, 0 sacks against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Absolute monstrous performance. So shout out to them. Austin Jackson looked impressive. And then Kendall Lamb again. Connor Williams, though, there were, man.
Austin Jackson was taking lunch money all day. Tua was not sacked once. But something to keep in mind here, Josh, because I don't think this is some overnight, all of a sudden, Kendall Lamb and Austin Jackson are studs. I definitely think they can both improve as players. I definitely think Austin Jackson, you consider he's, I think, 23 years old, a former first round pick. That's actually someone you cannot give up. But I think what makes this even more impressive is it wasn't clean. They just made it work. At the end of the day, this Dolphins team, they knew they might have been a little had a little bit of a challenge up front with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, but Austin Jackson, man, he did enough to keep Tua clean. Kendall Lamb did enough to keep Tua clean, and that's what's important. You can go back and watch that film. There's a lot of situations where the pocket collapsed, and yet the Dolphins had a way to work around it. There were times where the Chargers blitzed, the offensive line was overwhelmed. The Dolphins knew how to work around it. And to me, that's almost as more impressive as this idea that, hey, we can make it work. We aren't going to get just so dominated. It's not going to be one player that completely derails our entire operation here. And I think that's my favorite part. You could look at anyone on that line and, except the one play Liam Eichenberg played, you're not really scared that this is the guy who can completely lose us this football game.
Yeah, I apologize ahead of time if I'm scatterbrained at all. I have a sick kid. They're fighting. They're all three awake now. The cat's trying to climb up here, so it's just chaos. But I do think we got to tip our hat to Chris Greer, right? We know he lives to wear that hat, but he told us straight up, you guys are worrying about the offensive line and even the tight end unit. Didn't you mention the tight ends as well? I mean, Durham Smythe looked pretty all right as a tight end. I joked that they had their George Kittle all along. I mean, he was kind of up and down, but I think he had 3 of 5 targets. I had that written down somewhere. But man, it was just an awesome overall great performance. I mean, no, it did not go as I expected, Jake. I know you asked that question earlier. There's literally a cat playing with paper. Yo. Yeah, I know you asked earlier if this went as I thought, like in my wildest dreams, like in my fantasy world, yeah. The perfect homer world, this is how the game would have went. A shootout with Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and Tua coming out on top. And we got to mention he's up for FedEx Air Player of the Week because I did a quick article on that. So yeah, go vote for him. He's up like 90% or something.
Go check that on the Finsider as well. The passing attack, Josh, what really looked different to you? Because right away, to me, man, we know this Mike McDaniel offense loves motion. It likes to make defenders guess. But what I realized, or what I picked up on completely new this week, was they were still using that motion, but instead of just running behind the offensive line and going to the other side of the field, they were just kind of switching where they were in terms of inline, going to the outside, just kind of bouncing things pretty quickly. And it happens so fast. You think about the idea of someone running behind the offensive line, you kind of have a second and you have an idea of where they're going. But if someone bubbles out like that, that's not a lot of time to react and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think I wish I had the at in front of me, but I think it was like Saeed Scheme did a breakdown, right? He showed last season the way they came across the formation and motion and how the Los Angeles Chargers, Brandon Staley, how they would kind of shift the safeties to account for that. And then this week, like you mentioned, they lined up basically right behind the tackle and they were just quickly motioning him out. And they kept running this dagger. And I mean, it was just so successful. And Tyreek Hill, man, this guy, he has to be the most dynamic player in football, right? I mean, it's just insane. I think I saw a stat where it's like 10 times in his career. He had over 150 yards and like 2 touchdowns or something. There's only 10. He's tied with like Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and all these great guys. I mean, this guy's a game changer. And he had 11 catches. I mean, dude, him and Tua can go to the moon if they keep this up. I mean, their chemistry's out of this world.
There was a little bit of blackjack dealing too, though, because there were 2 players with 2 receptions, 3 with 3, and then Jalen Waddle had 4 receptions on 5 targets. Salvon Ahmed, 0 receptions on 3 targets is pretty interesting, but shout out Alec Ingold. There was a couple crossers where he even had a huge play. It's great to see him back there healthy as well. But Josh, I think it's really interesting to consider the fact last year you had Mike Gesicki and Trent Sherfield as your 3 and 4, your pseudo 3 and 4. They combined for 100 targets last year. That's one of our go-to back pocket stats that I'm never going to be able to forget. What's different from having those 100 targets go to Trent Sherfield and Mike Gesicki compared to River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios? What do you see differently there?
I feel like they're. I mean, I don't want to say more consistent, but I feel like Mike Gesicki, he didn't pick up the yak yards. He was consistent in a sense, but I feel like Braxton Berrios and River Craycraft, they kind of bring a little bit of a dynamic, and they can find those open areas in these zone defenses. And we see River Craycraft. I mean, this dude's going to be a touchdown machine, right? I mean, it's just everyone on offense was getting their hand. I thought at one point we were going to see an Alec Ingold touchdown. It wouldn't have been the first one, but you and I both thought we'd get one, and unfortunately we did not. But oh man, if you're Mike McDaniel, could that have gone any better? I mean, besides the Connor Williams, those mishaps there. I mean, a few of them look like it could have been on Tua, but besides Connor Williams, maybe uneasy play offensively, that was a hell of a performance.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And we're talking a lot about Connor Williams, rightfully so. There, it's really easy for the center to make a play that just completely derails a game. I'm not ready to get, too concerned about it just yet. He came out and said he was a little first game nerves. I'm willing to buy that. I mean, Josh, these guys are professional athletes. They're very smart people too, as talented as they are. I have little doubt that Connor Williams just sat out for an entire offseason or training camp, I should say. OTAs. He sat out for OTAs. My apologies. I have a hard time believing he sat out of OTAs wanting a new contract and all of a sudden he sucks. I know there were a couple of rough snaps in the preseason, but I mean, all last year he was solid. We don't need great from him. I think we're going to get fine throughout. I think there's a little overreaction week one, but I'm not super queasy about Connor Williams just yet.
Yeah, we got to, give it a little bit of time, right? I mean, even the defense, we're going to sit here and talk about how bad that run defense looked. I think last year they were ranked fourth. I mean, they got absolutely gashed, but it was week one. And when you needed them to make a play, they absolutely did. But back to Connor Williams, I do think it was kind of just maybe an off night for him. And he wasn't terrible. It was just some of those bad snaps, kind of get emphasized a little bit. But overall, man, that offensive line, I'm not talking too much about Robert Hunt. I don't know if I'm just overlooking him and just used to him being that steady presence there. But Austin Jackson, again, dude, what a performance. Then Isaiah Wynn. I think when we first signed him, I think you mentioned him potentially playing left guard, and the fact that he beat out Eichenberg, who we all saw in the depth chart and wondered if he was going to be there. Awesome stuff from the offensive line. Shout out Butch Berry, right? Hell of a performance from him. And then back to Connor Williams. If he can't play a snap, do you have any confidence in Liam Eichenberg? Our good pal Nate. Yeah, I didn't think so either. Nathan Rice asked us asked me on Twitter, and I figured I'd say it for the show. But yeah, I have no hope in Liam Eichenberg anywhere, to be honest.
I even went to Twitter. I asked people, what is the most surprising thing from the victory? And nearly everyone, offensive line, offensive line. This was a unit. This was a team that only, I think it was 6 penalties for 38 yards. Josh, how do you feel about them getting the plays off? Because I think there were still a few times where it'd be like 3-2-1, but every time that clock was at 3 or 2 dialing down, Tua, the offense never looked panicked. It does feel like there's a part of this offense where that is kind of what they want to do. I understand last year it was a problem. Last year it was way too late, but I do feel like they're flirting with this idea that we want to use this play clock.
I mean, you can't really blame Mike McDaniel, right? Sometimes you play online against a guy that's cheesing a Madden or something, you take the lead, you're going to milk that thing down to the last minute. I mean, so yeah, I mean, the way Mike McDaniel looks at this game, the way he's evolving, like we mentioned with the motion earlier, I think the man who posted on Twitter, I mean, he was sitting there saying how this was just a unique thing that it's going to be interesting to see the way defenses game plan for it, man. So, yeah, I think the way this thing went down was just perfect offensively. And I got to throw out Eric Ezukoma, right? I wanted to make sure I touched on him being our Debo jokingly, but they love giving him those, end around play opportunities with his legs. And he looks good every time he touches that football. So maybe he needs to get some touches in that backfield. Maybe we don't need Jonathan Taylor. We have Debo Ezukoma.
The coolest thing I should say about watching those running plays to Eric Ezukoma unfold is usually when the Dolphins have, in my entire life, my 29 years of Dolphins fandom, when they try to get cute like that, usually it's an absolute mess. Usually it's a fumble. Usually they lose a couple yards. Every time, man, he had a running lane. He had absolute daylight to work with. And that was just so impressive to me. Just the development of Mike McDaniel, where we have a coach that we can trust to do things that are a little ridiculous, but they work out. Josh, how long until it's like the Chiefs where they're doing a ring around the rosy in the huddle and then running up to the line? Because, man, there's a lot of different things this team is doing, and it's impressive to see the confidence they all have in each other, especially their head coach, to make it successful.
9:55 Sunday night. How's that? Is that a good? They play Sunday Night Football against the Patriots this week, right? So 9:55 on Sunday night, they're going to break that out and do a little ring around the rosy. Christian Wilkins will probably even be in the backfield, and he'll line up at like wide receiver, and they'll throw a fade or something crazy in typical Mike McDaniel fashion. But you mentioned which was the most impressive with the offensive line. Couldn't we look at it from a negative perspective and maybe say the defense and how poorly they played?
The Chargers defense, that is?
I was talking about Miami's.
Got you. Yeah, and that's something important to keep in mind too. And it's week one. We don't want to overreact too much. Josh, I want to switch over to the defense in 1 second. One final thing, and just one more shout out to Mike McDaniel. The Dolphins got the ball back with 7 seconds left in the first half. How many? 99.9% of every coach of all time takes a knee and goes in. The Dolphins found a way to kick a field goal. Got a shot downfield. JC Jackson gave him a little bit of love. That was something I think we nailed too. This idea that JC Jackson, it's this name from New England. I don't even want to give him credit for the interception. There was some pass interference there, but back to that play, man, going down and getting those 3 points, the Dolphins won by 2. Those things are so important. You're used to seeing teams go into the locker room with the tail between their legs. But this team, man, they just know what to do. You're not seeing some really poor choices. And I think that's important. Week 1 to week 17 is just sound, right decisions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what, again, Mike McDaniel brings to this team, that outside look, a different perspective. I mean, he called a timeout, right, to force them to kick a field goal with 14 seconds left, got downfield that JC Jackson, no one knows what he was thinking. I mean, there was no chance that ball was they were
Should've
going to
let him
find a way in
catch
the
it.
end zone, and he mugged it. He mugged them absolutely. So, thank you, JC Jackson. I mean, I think he was one of those that was talking bad about Tua. One of those times when the Dolphins beat New England, right? There's some quote out there about how he's just, a check down merchant or something like that. But, dude, again, this offense, Mike McDaniel, everything they got building, it's giving me confidence. I mean, you got like a top they were top 6 last year, and they're looking like juggernauts already. I mean, come on, man.
We're not used to being able to be this excited early in the season, but let's put a little water on it by talking about the defensive side of the football. Entering Sunday's game for the last 3 months, if you came and told me that Austin Eckler would carry the ball 16 times for 7.3 yards per a touchdown and along a 55, I would think the Dolphins are in trouble. If you were to add on top of that Joshua Kelly carried the ball 16 times for 91 yards and a tutty, I would say that we got blown out by 40. Josh, how does the defense get gashed this badly and you win a football game?
I mean, I want to joke, but is this that bend don't break Vic Fangio defense? I mean, my
Oh,
God,
it's
man,
bended.
it looked bad. And I mean, they're asking these guys up front to take on 1.5, gap assignments. And then you're asking these linebackers who, I mean, again, we do feel like it's a weakness, right? We want to see David Long get out there, but dude, he had 17 reps in that, and he was on the field for that huge Austin Eckler run where it looked like you could drive, the magic school bus through it, right? I mean, it was a huge hole. He gave up a big play to Keenan Allen. I wonder if he just, Vic Fangio is just up in the booth like, dude, get that dude off the field. I want to see my boy AVG out there. So no matter what the Dolphins try to do, they cannot stop the run. And you wonder, I mean, what would be different, right? Jalen Ramsey be in the box. We saw Javon Holland do a lot of that stuff. Brandon Jones, maybe. I mean, it's a little concerning, but again, the Chargers offensive line is pretty good. Austin Eckler is great, but you mentioned Josh Kelly, man. I mean, he's a solid fan. I've had him in some dynasty leagues, right? He's that solid backup guy who can maybe get you some points, but man, that defensive line, did not instill faith in me at all, and it made me wonder why I wanted Vic Fangio more than anything, but it makes you wonder, like what's he doing out there?
I want to preface this all by saying the Dolphins did not play well. And I'm going to go on this massive spin zone here. But Josh, I think when you get into a game against the Chargers, and we spoke about it before on the preview pod, it was the Brandon Staley comment, right? It takes so many 5-yard runs to equal a 50-yard completion. I do think this was partially by design, not to give up 7 billion yards per carry, but just to make sure the Chargers are going to score. They have an absolutely stacked roster. No, they're going to score points. Just make sure it takes as long as possible and it's not easy. Obviously, some of those runs are easy, but to do those 15-yard runs, I mean, you got to do those 5 times to get into field goal range. Actually, if you start from the 25, that's a tutty. But I mean, if you have to be so consistent. The Chargers lived up to those expectations of being consistent. And I kind of think this is a game where the Chargers played the offense to beat the Dolphins defense. They just couldn't do it quick enough.
Yeah, and I guess I should backtrack and say I'm not in any way worried about Vic Fangio and what he can bring to Miami, right? I mean, it might mean that we need to go out there and get a veteran defensive lineman like we've talked about many, many times, or, next year draft a stud linebacker because I don't know. Maybe David Long got banged up, but right now, man, that still seems like the weakness. But you're right. They knew what they needed to do, kind of let the Chargers grind out that clock and not beat them with the big plays. And Herbert was held for in under 200 yards, I think. And to think that Tua would throw for double his yardage and then 3 touchdowns to his one. Who would have thought that coming into this game, right? With the way the Chargers offense was last year. So do need that run game to get better, the run defense. But overall, man, when they needed plays, right, they made them. When Vic Fangio needed to call those blitzes, they got to the quarterback when it mattered most. So bend don't break, but don't give us that heart attack. I mean, my heart was breaking a little bit there towards the end.
Just a quick note too. Yeah. So when you take Justin Herbert's yards and then you minus the sacks, then he's at 199. So yeah, in case you're a little confused by that, that's how they get to 199 total team yards. Javon Holland led the way with 14 total tackles and a tackle for a loss. Deshaun Elliott right behind him with 13 tackles, 8 solo. Josh, this is something we'll be able to talk a lot more about 3-4 games into the season, but Deshaun Elliott over Brandon Jones, is this gut thing, crystal ball feeling? Let me know. Is that just kind of working Brandon Jones back, or is it Elliott's job to lose?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's just working, Brandon Jones back, but who knows? I mean, that might be that difference that you need in the box, right, to help stop the run game in the future.
And I think Javon Holland fits that role so well is because people forget in college he did actually play as a slot cornerback as well. So there is that level of versatility where he can be that slot corner, he can go back be that free safety. And while you want him to be that linebacker, I think that's still something you learn over time is just trying to dodge those offensive linemen and figure things out that way. Uh, I still think someone like Brandon Jones would be a total difference maker in terms of stopping the run. I did like how Deshaun Elliott played. I did like how none of these receivers really got behind the Dolphins defense. And overall, I mean, Justin Herbert, 7 yards of reception, man. You take that 8 days of the week. No doubt about it. I mean, that's just how you contain an offense. And I think if you knew that and then you knew the Los Angeles rushing stats, it changes everything how you feel. And I think you're kind of okay with Eckler running the ball nearly as much as Justin Herbert's throwing the ball. I think you'd take that 10 days.
You had him in fantasy, didn't you? You had Eckler in one of your
Yeah.
fantasy leagues, and no, yeah, I was just kidding. What I was gonna say about Javon Holland and just the Brandon Jones or Deshaun Elliott in general is just you don't want your safeties right leading your team in tackles, basically. So,
Hmm.
yeah, man, they held Justin Herbert in check. I do wish that they could have contained him a little bit earlier in the game on some third downs. He extended the play with his legs, and that's the most frustrating thing as a Dolphins fan, man. Right? We have let these quarterbacks. I mean, it's Justin Herbert. He's not like, yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's a giraffe walking around the field. He's not this speedy little guy just swerving around things. He's awkward. It's not baby deer level, but it's hey, I can tackle you. He's not like this big physical Big Ben monster. I mean, he could turn into that. He's still kind of young, but I mean, yeah, he's a very tackable guy, and that is what makes it frustrating.
What about X? How are you feeling about X? I know he had 2 critical penalties, that kind of led to a touchdown there. Looked better than last season with those 2 messed up groins, right? But you didn't want your stud cornerback, your shutdown corner now that Jalen Ramsey's out, committing those penalties so late in the game. And again, some of these penalties are tic tac. You mentioned that Braxton Berrios got mugged on that interception. I mean, they could go either way there.
Yeah, so obviously, you want to see more from your stud cornerback. Seeing X with 6 tackles is also a little concerning, and that's why the Chargers' run game was so good. They got so outside so quickly, where you were forcing the cornerbacks, you were forcing the safeties to make the tackles. And if one guy pulls a Brent Grimes and just wants to walk out of the way instead of tackling, that's how you get a 50-yard run for a touchdown. I think against a team like the Chargers, I look back to last year, Xavier Howard got mossed like 3 times by Mike Williams. I think he came out there wanting to kind of get something back. I don't think he really got that comeback, but I didn't think he was terrible. I think he's going to give up some. I think your defense is going to give up some to Justin Herbert. But you hit the nail on the head, man. He's healthy. He's healthy. I think he's going to be all right throughout the season. And it's just a very tough benchmark week 1 to say, all right, how do you look against the Chargers and where are we going from there? That type of thing. Just because, I mean, all the weapons, everyone likes to talk about Quentin Johnson, but I mean, Donald Parham had 3 receptions. I mean, Austin Eckler had his 4. So it's just there's a lot of weapons there, and it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and they had some big dudes. I mean, there were some. I think Cater Co was like lined up on Parham at one point, and it was just a huge disadvantage. I mentioned David Long being matched up on Keenan Allen at one point, so they were creating some mismatches out there. We do got to shout out our boy Jalen Phillips. He had that game sealing sack. I mean, adrenaline in our veins, right? We were all going crazy when that happened. So I guess the only other question I have, Jake, is do you think run defense? I said have it written down that was brutal. And Christian Wilkins, I mean, how'd you feel about him? I mean, you're seeing some of these guys like Connor Williams, Christian Wilkins. These guys want to get paid. I mean, do you think maybe they're waiting to see Christian Wilkins and how he fits in this system? I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to say that he's going to take a step back by any sense of the imagination, but how do you feel about Christian Wilkins after that first game?
If Christian Wilkins takes a step forward, he gets the contract. That step forward is maybe sprinkling in 8-9 sacks to his already stellar run defense. He had a tough time. He was double teamed a lot yesterday, and like I said, he's not going to get those blitzes like the Brian Flores, the Josh Boyer defense would allow. So it's on his plate to do more. And If this is a trend 3 weeks down the road, then I'll get concerned. But for now, I think we're in a situation where if he takes a step forward, he gets paid. If he stands neutral, if he's the same awesome guy he was last year, I'm not sure I completely agree with this, but I think franchise tag. If he takes a step back, maybe you're trying to trade. I don't know. But right now, man, I'm not super worried. I think it's just kind of waiting to see if those impact plays can come.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I just thought maybe with the way that run defense kind of got washed out, that, maybe I was sitting there thinking maybe they just wanted to see the way he, went out there and played this year in this new system before we dropped off the bag. But now, man, Tua keeps playing the way he does. I mean, that bag he's going to get is going to make the Dolphins pinch that pocket pretty crazy if he continues to play on this, trajectory, because he's just this game was out of this world offensively, and the defense again stepped up. Get Vic Fangio out of the box. That's what I want. I want him down there with his Hotel Transylvania looking face, like yelling at these guys when they're getting gashed in the middle of the field, instead of up there in a box where he's struggling to see what the heck's going on.
But he looks so cool out there wearing those sunglasses. He looked like an absolute stud. One thing I do want to mention too, because the defense didn't look great, and I actually had a tweet like, "Hey, the defense played well this drive," and I think they're elite again until they make a mistake next drive, because it wasn't. They didn't really have any of those statement plays. But one underlying stat I thought was interesting, that Jalen Phillips had 7 pressures, the second most in the entire NFL this week. Do you feel that pass rush getting there? Do you think it was like last year where it was Justin Herbert kind of letting the blitz come towards him and then just throwing behind it? Was this just all simulated pressures where we're got to be a little nervous that this pass rush isn't there? Where's your queasy meter at with them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see more. I mean, hearing that, I mean, how well he stacked up against the rest of the league. I mean, Jalen Phillips is a stud. We already put him in the Ring of Honor. Bradley Chubb, we're still waiting to see him take that astronaut step. But I just felt like the
Moonwalk.
pressure was just, a second too late, right? So those pressures that he got, I mean, they had to be right inside that little, thing that they gauge to make sure that it's considered a pressure or whatever. So I want to see more out of him. I want to see him get home a little bit more, but I'm not worried right now. Again, I think that run defense is what scares me most. And then that middle of the Dolphins defense at linebacker, because Jerome Baker made some plays, but even him in coverage, they were praising him in man coverage, but then there was a play in zone where he just didn't get deep enough and allowed a completion. So overall, I want to see more out of the middle linebackers and that defensive line up front. But queasy meter with the pass rushers, not so much.
How much points do they have to give up to the Patriots for you to get queasy? I know there's a little bit of missing context to that, but
Did you tweet 30, or was that someone else I saw on Twitter? There's so many, you're scrolling through Twitter and you just see a bazillion, mentions. So it wasn't you, but someone said if they give up 30, then we should worry. So, dude, I'd be scared. I'd be a little scared if the Dolphins gave up 30 points to Mac Jones. I mean, how many did they score on the Eagles? Was it 25-20 or something, or is that a different game?
that sounds right, and it was
I
a
tried my
lot.
best.
No, you hit the nail on the head. The Eagles actually just got up early on the Pats. I think they were up like 14-0, and then the Pats slowly chipped back. I look back to last year opening day. I think the Dolphins won that one 20-17. We want the Dolphins to be better this year, and we want to prove that, hey, this is the AFC East. We need to make an AFC East statement. I'll say 24, right? There's a lot of points scored in the league. I want to say 17, but there's such a small window for error where with this offense, the way it can operate and give give an opponent just a couple more extra possessions with their ability to just kind of score on any given play, having more opportunities with the football is going to result in more points. That's something Vic Fangio is going to have to wrestle with throughout this year. But yeah, I'd say like 24, I think, is like the max before I'd start really panicking.
Yeah, so they scored 20 on the Eagles defense. So I mean, yeah, I'm kind of in that area now, looking at that and realizing that. But 30, dude, if they give up 30, then then the queasy, I'd be Joe Philbin again, Philip Wheeler. I'd be scared.
No burgers. I think that's the rule when you go into New England, is absolutely no burgers. Josh, overall, man, I don't think we could ask for much more on a victory Tuesday morning. But let me get 3 things from you. 3 players you want to see more from going into next week. It doesn't need to be super detailed or anything like that, but off the top of your head, who do you want more from?
More from, I guess, okay, we'll go with Connor Williams. I want to see more from him. Maybe not some of those, those snaps that we all saw out there and, ended some drives there, especially that first one. That was a killer. So I'll go with him. And then I want to see more out of, give me Bradley Chubb. I want to see more out of Bradley Chubb. I want to see him get home. I want to see that guy that we gave that monster contract to. And then last but not least, I mean, Robbie Chosen's not going to be activated, so I can't say him. I'll go with David Long Jr. I want to see more out of him because I hyped him up, man. I wasted him countless hours making these cut ups from you, man. Got stoked that you were coming to this defense. So those would be my three guys. What about you, Jake? Who you got?
Dude, you must be on Jason Sanders' payroll. If you don't want to even talk about him or mention him.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I think my daughter, she's sick. Like I said, I think she threw up at that point, and I came back and I didn't even see the kick. I just was trying to figure out what was going on there. So that might be why I'm letting Jason Sanders have a pass, or maybe I'm just crazy. So you're going with Jason Sanders. You want to see more out of him?
Yeah, and it's worth noting. I mean,
He did drill a 71 yarder, right? Isn't that what TV said? 71 yarder. Did you see that? The graphic came up and said 71 yarder. It was for a 41-yard attempt before the half, and I was like, like how like I thought I was on something like crazy, thinking that this 41-yard field goal was 71 yards. I was like, what are they doing? And then it went in, and I'm like, okay, that was definitely a mistake with the graphic.
So what you're telling me is that the graphics team at CBS is also on Jason Sanders' payroll. He's just paying everyone, and that's how he's keeping this job. I like it. I like it. I want to see more from Eric Ezukoma. I don't think it has to be someone who played poorly, but man, every time he's on the field, he's another one of those guys your eyes just kind of dart towards. It's really hard when you have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, all these guys out there, but man, seeing him line up in the backfield, he's so huge. He just sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like that old picture of Andy Reid playing football where he was just like the biggest guy on the field and nobody was really close. And if I had to give you one more player, the offensive line, I think if the offensive line, dude, if it plays like it did Sunday again, I don't think it was perfect, but man.
Yeah, I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, no, we're 36 minutes into a victory pod, man. There's some nits being picked here. How about that secondary? I'd love to see an interception next week. The biggest thing, man, what's absolutely crazy, and I'm kicking myself because I lost the quote. Here it is, Joshua. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for me to crack a egg of knowledge on your head?
Crack the egg.
I only see this line. I apologize, whoever wrote this story. Fins or Die posted it on Twitter. So if you go to him, maybe you'll be able to find where it originally came from. But since 2000, teams that rushed for more than 200 yards, allowed fewer than 100 rushing yards, did not turn the ball over, and won the turnover margin by at least 2, Joshua, their record is 110-0 before Sunday.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to DM him because he's a complete troll, and I mean that's some ridiculous stuff. So he probably typed this thing up and is fooling everyone. But dude, that would be incredible. Did you see it other than him? Because I don't know about that. I don't know about Sorty. He likes to cause ruckus.
The only reason, like, it isn't written something like it's written like it's a screenshot. It's not written like it's just like some text and like a tweet or something. It looks like you're reading it on Miami Herald or something like that. So
yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. He's very he could be pretty in depth with that. So I'm gonna have to ask him if that's some bull crap because he probably saw me tweeting out all those things about Tua, because did you see the different ones? Like he was 5th among week 1 most yards in week 1 history and 4th among Burrow, Mahomes for 350 plus yard games and 2 touchdowns. Only like 4 players have ever done that. I had all these things listed out. So you could be trolling, but dude, either way, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. This has been the best Victory Tuesday, and I'm just happy that I was able to come on here and talk to you, Jake, and you with your also standing up. I like it.
Got the hand movements. Everybody out there, if you are listening to the show and you just want to look at Josh's beautiful hair, all of our big shows, all of our flagship shows, the ones that are released with 2 clips, will also be on YouTube. We will tweet out those links at Houts, at jmendel94. Joshua continues to do the incredible cut-ups throughout the year, so make sure you're following him on Twitter, at Houts, and on YouTube, Take It to the Houts. I'm pretty sure that's what he's working with these days.
Yeah, I'm not even sure anymore. How'd you do in fantasy? Sorry, you were doing a great outro, but how'd you do in fantasy this week? Because I was up and down. I'm in so many, I was up and down, but I want to see how you did.
If Delvin Cook gets a goose egg, and if Josh Allen goes bananas, I'll go 3-1. Otherwise, I'm looking like a 1-3. But guillotine league, I'm feeling pretty good at. I think if you make that first week in a guillotine league, and you're not that first person to wear the big L and get kicked out, it's a big confidence boost. You got on your survivors? Anything dramatic happened to you? Just ruin your entire football season?
No, I mean, I got Lamar Jackson in a few leagues, so I'm a little scared there. And T. Higgins was in a league that I also had Lamar Jackson in, so that was a big stinker. But overall, I mean, you win some, you lose some. But if the Dolphins do what they did, 36-34, beat the Chargers, the whole world's watching. NFL's changing their header on Twitter. Everyone's sitting here saying, I've been a fan forever, a Tua fan forever, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, it's just nice to be able to sit here now and watch Monday Night Football, right, Jake, with our feet cut up and just can sit here and critique the heck out of the Jets and the Bills, right? They both suck. They both are terrible. And I want to see the Jets win, though, because I do have a bunch of Jets players in fantasy leagues. So I'm a sicko. To heck with both of them.
You monster. I'm sorry about J.K. Dobbins. That, like, I was so upset when I saw that, man. Does anybody have worse luck? Just, I mean, not only does he get hurt, then you have to listen to all the reports about when you're going to come back, and he comes back, he looks awesome. Just to get out, I think it would torn ACL, and he's done for the year already, man. That's brutal.
It might have been Achilles, but either way, man, it
Achilles,
just
you're right.
it absolutely breaks your heart. And I mean, you hope he keeps with it, right? Keeps his chin up and grinds back and tries to get back out there. But isn't this a long going thing with the Baltimore Ravens training staff? Like, haven't there been negative reports around them and some of the injuries that have come out of there? I think Rashad Bateman might have been complaining or something. But dude, I hate to. J.K. Dobbins is one of my favorite players. And you said who has worse luck? I mean, maybe Raekwon McMillan, right? Doesn't he have pretty bad luck? I mean, that was a guy who I was super high on. So your heart goes out to J.K. Dobbins, and you hope he can bounce back. But torn Achilles, man, after all those other injuries, it's going to be tough.
Week 1 is in the books. I mentioned it a little while ago, but it's worth mentioning again. At Houts on Twitter. Take it to the Houts on YouTube. I have Twitter Blue now, so you'll see more and more of my tweets going out there. But, man, I have to say, and I started the pod with this, I'm going to end the pod with this. In my 29 years of being a fan of the Miami Dolphins, never in my wildest dreams did I think that Jason Sanders any kicker would miss something with less than 2 minutes left to go up 3, and it didn't matter. That, to me, that makes Vic Fangio, so far, that's the only reason I think he's living up to the standard. The numbers all were terrible, but he knew exactly what levers to pull. The Chargers got 1 first down and then went backwards like 30 yards. Man, that's just so impressive. It leaves me so speechless because the Aaron Rodgers where Philip Wheeler's in coverage, the just walk down the field, kick the game-winning field goal. It's just so deflating. The fact it didn't matter, man, it just warms your heart.
It does, and this isn't your same old Dolphins. This is the team that we all imagine, right, coming into the season. The best team we've seen in our life on paper, this, that, and the other thing. They look pretty damn good, and I looked it up, WQAM. I'll make sure we have the exact. There's probably numbers after that. We'll tweet out the video because, again, you want to see Jake Stan. You want to see this cousin it rat's nest, whatever it is, me fighting off cats and yelling at my kids. I'll make sure we do the little cut, like technical difficulties, like the SpongeBob thing, or like 3 minutes later, and then I'll cut that for YouTube. But dude, I'm just happy that we're on here talking Dolphins football and that we can, do this together because it's going to be a great season, at least if week 1's any indication.
We cannot wait. But that is it. That is all we have. Go enjoy your Tuesday for another Dolphins podcast. We can't wait till we talk to you next time. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.